The honest answer is, I don't know. And I think we all have to be humble about our understanding of North Korea. I certainly try to be. I think having won this victory in his battle with Jang Son-taek, whatever it was about, Kim Jong-un probably has greater self-confidence and feels greater freedom of action. One question, I guess, is how much of a debt he feels that he owes to the military as a result, or if his strategic direction is to balance economic development and military first, what does he have to do to satisfy the military and that part of the policy? Is it give them more of a budget for their conventional forces? Is it to push ahead on the nuclear program? Does pushing ahead with the nuclear program require more testing? At some point they're going to have to test again, I think. Is Sanggun best expressed by bold conventional action against South Korea? Now, all of these things have costs, but there may be a temptation to take one of these initiatives just to demonstrate to the military that they are true partners in this effort. I think the problem with economic development is that the rewards are not immediate, particularly if it's economic development of the whole society. If it's benefiting the elite in Pyongyang, that may be easier. It seems that they've been somewhat successful in doing that. And so it would, I suppose, be a continuation of those benefits. Now, I don't know certainly the extent to which Jang Son-taek was the channel by which those benefits flowed to the elite, and if he's out of the picture, how does that change the situation? But I would expect at least an effort to continue the combination of objectives and to resist any effort to get him to choose. Whether he is successful in that, will shape what he does further on. I think that if he does try to carry out provocative actions, there will be negative consequences. I think it's not totally clear that Jang Son-taek played that role. I think that is perhaps the conventional wisdom, and so it should lead to concern that maybe we will see a new round of testing or perhaps a return to the limited conventional military strikes against South Korea. I am fairly sure that China will be urging restraint on North Korea and trying to persuade the regime not to engage in these sorts of activities. How much influence China has in the absence of Jang Son-taek, I don't know, and China may not know. But I think that the prudent approach on our part, U.S. and South Korea, is to assume that the breakers have been removed and that it's important to strengthen deterrence and remind the North Korean regime that these kinds of provocative actions will have consequences. One key test of the U.S.-China relationship with respect to North Korea is the unknown of what North Korea is going to do in the security field. If it does not conduct a missile test, if it does not conduct a nuclear test, if it doesn't engage in limited conventional military provocations against the South, if it does not engage in a lot of harsh rhetoric, that might give the United States some confidence that China is serving a useful purpose by restraining North Korea. And that would be a good thing. I think our basic point of departure about negotiations is a very pragmatic one, that they should be productive and they should work towards an outcome. It doesn't have to work towards an outcome right away, but we need to have some confidence that we are moving in a direction that suits our interests. We need confidence that when North Korea makes commitments, it will actually abide by them. I think, in principle, we have an appreciation for China's efforts to create a diplomatic track with respect to the nuclear program. As China has ideas for resuming the six-party talks or other kinds of negotiating channels, we will certainly discuss that in depth and working with our allies, seek to ensure that there is some chance of progress. But we understand that it's important for China to have confidence in our side. Obviously, North Korea could make this a whole lot easier by being willing to talk on terms that we would find even the least bit attractive. I think it's becoming a management tool. I think that if one looks at North Korea's statements and actions, its policy direction is one that's inconsistent with the fundamental goals of the six-party talks. Conflict management is not a bad thing. That's why we were prepared to do the Leap Day Agreement, because in our view, it did create understandings that would stabilize the relationship between North Korea and the United States, North Korea and its neighbors. Regrettably, North Korea walked away from that agreement. So just as with negotiations to resolve a dispute, discussions to manage a conflict need to create a confidence that they're actually going to be effective. First of all, the six-party talks are not, the stated purpose is not for conflict management. It's for something more profound and more fundamental. So let's not degrade this potentially useful mechanism by converting its purpose. Moreover, there's no reason why conflict management can't be done in other ways through other channels with other tools. In fact, a certain amount of conflict management is probably going on through regular diplomacy. So maybe we shouldn't create expectations and create unnecessary costs. Let's just do the job. I think in the United States there's a lot of confidence in President Park's approach to North Korea, that it's based on principles, that it's based on the long-term goal of denuclearization, but at the same time it is not going to give up the opportunities to create links into North Korean society. And fulfill certain humanitarian objectives. It's not going to avoid the possibility that there may be incentives that would be useful. And so I think the South Korean government should be confident in the U.S. support for this effort. With respect to the effectiveness of strategic patience or sharpening choices, the first point to make is that this was never going to yield results quickly. The objective of this kind of policy is to change the policies of North Korea. And that is not something that's going to occur overnight. It does require a mix of incentives and disincentives. The possibility that North Korea might change its policies is, I'm sure, affected by the fact that they're going through a leadership transition. In a way, the immediate aftermath of the death of one leader and the succession of a new and younger leader is probably the time you would least expect to have a policy change. Because Kim Jong-un will feel a certain obligation to continue the policies of his father. He will have a need to balance the different institutional forces within the North Korean regime, even as he builds his own power. If there is to be a fundamental policy change that would be compatible with U.S. and ROK interests, it is probably after the new leadership comes to realize that trying to do economic development and the nuclear program is self-contradictory. It's not going to work, and that they need to try something else. I don't know if that day will ever come. I'm not surprised that it hasn't come already. I think that the hope behind the Lipe agreement and our willingness to do it was that maybe we could create a set of circumstances where that day would come faster. And we were disappointed, but I'm not sure it was a bad idea to try. If there is to be an adjustment in sharpening choices, it is probably in the direction of increasing the disincentives and making life a little bit more difficult for North Korea. The most obvious way that could take place would be strengthening unilateral sanctions by the United States and like-minded countries. I have no idea whether such things are being considered. I know some scholars are suggesting them. But that, in the near term, seems to be the one possibility. But this is a long game that we're playing. Playing a long game in democratic systems is not easy. It requires good articulation of policy and a steadiness and patience. Patience is a tool for this kind of policy, and it's absolutely necessary. It may be that certain kinds of sanctions, economic sanctions, could create difficulties for China itself. I mean, one of the reasons that the Banco Delta Asia sanctions seemed to be effective was not just their effect on North Korea, but the complications it created for China and the choices it forced on Chinese banks to choose between its access to the U.S.-based international financial system or supporting North Korea's trade. And this is similar to the situation on the security side. China seems to be most cooperative when the actions that the United States and the ROK take in response to North Korean provocations make China more vulnerable because China is a neighbor of North Korea's. So that complicates China's situation, but if it has to make a choice, it's going to choose its own security and its own economic growth over North Korea's obsession with its current policies.